Shawn, welcome. So pleased to have you here. Really appreciate you taking the time. Maybe we could just start by you giving us a little bit of a background on your journey to where you are today.
Thanks, Ty. Very nice to meet you. Happy to share a little bit about my personal journey and then also my professional journey. So, some friends may know I am born and raised originally from Singapore. So, I spent 2.5 decades of my adult life in that sunny island. More stories there. And then the past 1.5 decades stateside, where I have been known to many building partnership programs in technology and channel. And now where I'm in a very early stage voice automation startup, Route, where I am number 11. So truly, I think partner folks are becoming more entrepreneurial. We are running businesses, and I'm so excited about the future that holds for us together.
Awesome. Yeah, and you told me that you the founder of Secret Lab, who they're not a sponsor, but I do love their equipment. I think Chris potentially bought a Secret Lab chair as well after trying mine. You told me,
Sweet.
I think, that you grew up in the same town as the founder.
Absolutely. So I grew up in a city state called Singapore. Let's round it off to 5 or 6 million people in a landmass that's not too much larger than Lake Tahoe. So you can think about the density there. And then when you grow up in a place like that, one of three independent city states besides Monaco and the Vatican City, you are going to need to be friends with everybody. So a place that makes a lot of friends, a lot of allies. And then at the same time, as I think about my journey as a partnership leader, we also talked about partnerships back then. We called it by a different name. We thought about it in terms of clusters. So maybe a little closer and akin to the ecosystem idea or analogy that friends are using nowadays.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to do to build some good partnerships out in Singapore and been out there a few times. One time I was fortunate
That's
enough to
awesome.
stay at the Marina Bay Sands, which is a really crazy hotel. It's an amazing place. And I have some folks on my team based out there now as well at Deal, and
Incredible.
yeah, doing a great job. So did you tell me a little bit more about how you ended up in partnerships?
For sure. So in the first half of my career, and then I'll transition to the recent second half, I started my career more in business development and corp dev at a corporate investment fund. So I had the investor hat. I understood how to forge alliances, work on very strategic deals. After business school, I spoke to a friend, an entrepreneur friend, who pretty much told me you're going to have to roll up your sleeves and be an operator. And so that's how I landed at Amazon. So from 2014 to 2018, I spent 4 years, or I like to affectionately call them dog years at Amazon. But the high point of my time there was seeing the birth of a new category, Alexa and voice assistants, and being able to play that role, having that front row seat there as I led sales for Amazon in that burgeoning and now very established category. That set my stage to transition into partnerships because right after Amazon, I then took on two later stage partnership builder leader roles. And finally, here I am now at an early stage, looking at the category, looking at my role in a partner first, or as Alan Eller likes to call it, an ecosystem first, ecosystem led company with a mindset that from the get go, if we imbue partnerships into the company's DNA, if it is cross functional and strategic, it's going to change the way we evolve and grow. And that's the challenge I'm setting myself up for right now.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think a lot of what we do today in partnerships kind of came out of that business development world. It makes a ton of sense. Like I myself started in business development, and I think a lot of folks did. I know on the Amazon voice products, there was a lot of like work around the developer ecosystem, and then also around
Mhm.
partnerships early on as well to get kind of those early applications built. How much of that did you see, and how much of that was kind of an inspiration in like the partnerships work that you do today?
Wow, that is an awesome question, Ty. I would love to say, and I know the math doesn't add up to 100%. I would love to say 100% and 100%. Let me explain that a little. 100%, the thing that folks often see is that Amazon works externally with a lot of partners, whether it is with Amazon devices, whether it is with Amazon Web Services. The thing that is less obvious, but is such a, I know this word sounds cliche, but it means a lot to folks at Amazon. They take it very seriously in strategy and execution is there's such an internal flywheel of device, services, product and service experience and consumption that in itself, those internal partnerships, feeding of experiences into each other, that really drives it. So when you think about voice assistants, you can think about voice, but you also think about the domains that voice is critical for, like music, shopping, lights. At one point, I went a little crazy, not surprising, occupational hazard, and I may have did wire up 11 light bulbs in my apartment in San Francisco for smart home control. So Alexa could, at one instance, turn on my house. Small apartment as it was, that gave me a kick out of it. So just to bring it together, 100% external partnerships with brands, with channels, and I'm happy to share some of my experience when I joined Amazon's music team after transitioning out from the Alexa core team, how those extend the experience of Alexa. And then Alexa as a whole, to the second part of your question, it is really a lot of learning as we go. When we were building a new category, Amazon adopted both a first principles mindset, so being really scrappy, being close to the data, not surprising for anyone who knows Amazon, but at the same time, being very willing and open to take experiments. In the early days, here's a story that I fondly recall. We had a product manager gift Oprah and Echo and her team. And after Oprah and her team received it, they pretty much said, this has to be on my holiday show, Oprah's Favorite Things. And for those of us who do or don't follow Oprah's Favorite Things, her holiday special, you do know that a lot of product is sold, evangelized. And so that was one of the tipping points, as I like to say. There are a couple more tipping points I love to share along the way. So all those experiments internally, getting new data, 100% the approach for a new category. And then second, all those partnerships internally within Amazon, helping to spin that flywheel so that by the time it is ready for prime time, by the time we've had some tipping points lead us there, the stars align. So when we say the stars align, it's because there's been so much prep to build that stairway, so to speak, before we get there.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, there's so much to unpack there. It would be awesome to hear a little bit first about, like when you're thinking about some of these, like specifically maybe on Amazon Music, when you're thinking about some of these kind of collaborations, the obviously Amazon has like a real culture of experimentation, but also I think like a real culture of being impact and kind of metrics orientated as well. Like how, like when you're thinking about something that is quite experimental, how are you thinking about setting your goals on that team, and how did you work with other teams on their goals as well?
That is a great question, Ty. I think there are two aspects. One is that ultimately there is an objective truth that we can unearth through the experiment. So if you do believe that the experiment is going to lend us insights, for instance, and I could geek out a little bit for folks who are following this, I would make an assumption about the elasticity of a promotion that I'm running, assuming that for a change in the price, if I were to run a Black Friday promotion, which Amazon does run on some of the Echo and Alexa products, that would double, triple, have a multiple of sales and lift. The experiment is going to prove that. And then we then incorporate that learning into future promotion planning, into future supply planning to make sure we can support it. The one thing you want to do is to obviously have an amazing sales promotion around Black Friday. The thing you don't want to do is for folks to receive their Echo or Alexa devices 3 months out, because by then it's February and they're not in that same mind space as when they first purchased that. So delivering on that promise and that delightful promotional experience is as important. So the front and the back. I think to your point there, that was some of the testing that we learned. And then in terms of helping other teams with their goals, here's where we understood that unless the entire team actually planned it together and orchestrated their goals together in tandem, it wouldn't work. So what was frequently a part of Amazon's process was strategic document reviews, as folks may be aware. So we would get in a room once a week and we're talking about the leadership. So this is the senior leader of the business. These are regional sales and category leaders, and we're looking at the data. So what I mentioned to you just now in terms of elasticity sales, we're looking at data. At the same time, we're doing forward planning. We're thinking, what about the next week? Obviously, a lot of activity, putting our heads together around major holiday planning, but also what about the end of the year? How is our supply looking forward? So there's a lot of coordination, a lot of data being ingested, and most importantly, a lot of action being taken on insights that the business is learning together. So in some ways, if you think about it, there's a lot of tight connection between data, insights, and action that Amazon as a whole does. Happy to share a little bit about how that then plays into partnerships, as I saw, for instance, in the music team and even externally with Amazon's reseller partners, because clearly that will be a topic that's very close and dear to what a lot of PL folks are thinking about.
Awesome. Yeah, let's talk more about that.
For sure. So if you think about that, let's talk first about the Amazon Alexa partner experience, and then I'll go to music, since music is an associated domain. So in my early years, and I'm just fortunate, Amazon really encouraged, I'm sure this is something that is close to your heart as well, a lot of internal mobility. While remote work wasn't yet a thing back in 2015 to 17 as it is now, the fact that I had moved about 3 internal roles, that cross training within Amazon, was very helpful for me because I understood the goals and motivations of different teams, but I also understood how we would need teams, disparate teams, to actually work together in a coordinated way. And when it did, then of course there's a lot of momentum that you get. So for instance, when I was the category sales leader for Alexa, we sold on Amazon.com. That's what we call our online channel. But we also sold through our offline reseller partners. So famous partners, Best Buy, Staples, and specialty stores. And one word that really came up a lot of times was parity of experience, because Amazon is so obsessed, customer obsessed is one of the leadership principles, about having similar experience. So if you do something on Amazon.com for a holiday promotion or for an activity, you want to offer that same experience at Best Buy and its reseller partners. And so that became that coordination every week, where I orchestrated a lot of what was happening online, but we had a huge team of sellers and leaders selling to our offline partners. So that coordination became really critical, not only in terms of parity of experience, in terms of insights and intelligence on the market and what was happening, but then also allowing customers that free choice. You could walk into a Best Buy store and be able to access that same experience, obviously with Best Buy voicing and Best Buy brand, but the Amazon device and Alexa experience. And when you go to Amazon.com, similar. So that way, we didn't use the word omni-channel, but it was truly multi-channel or omni-channel. You could experience the same product and services in both places. And that truly is quite magical as I think about it in hindsight.
Yeah, that's super interesting, and I think like it's probably more obvious in retail and commerce that you have to have these partnerships with the kind of brick and mortar retailers. But
Mm-hmm.
like there is still some form of competition, right? Where like in an ideal world, those people would be
Yeah.
buying that directly from Amazon online. Like, how does that? Like I say, it's kind of it's still a no brainer that you would work with Best Buy. I think a little bit, but like maybe not forever. Like, how does that conversation happen internally, where you're like, okay, we're going to invest a bunch of time and effort in this Best Buy partnership, but in an ideal world, we would really like people to buy it online from us, not through Best Buy.
For sure. I'm sure the usual considerations around margin, control of the channel and channels comes into play. But if you think about it, and this is where, and I clearly, as friends may know, I've left Amazon, and some of it are my personal observations. Amazon has always prioritized distribution and maximizing the scope of its offering. So it's always played the long game. There was a joke once where at one point, Amazon share price went down a little bit, and somebody asked, "Are you concerned?" or asked their leadership, "Are you concerned about it?" And the response, at that time, it was 2020. The response was no, because we're planning for a quarter in 2023. We're already 3 years ahead, and we're looking and we're being strategic about choices now that will impact that future. So Amazon has always had a very strategic long-term orientation. To your point, two things come to mind. One is to maximize distribution. Although you can have most control over Amazon.com, you're going to need to meet the customer where they are. There's no question about it. So Amazon has taken steps, obviously, to sell through offline retail partners to maximize that too. More a hypothesis I formed myself, there are certain different audiences that like to shop at Best Buy than at Amazon. And if you were to constrain the distribution to just online or Amazon.com, you are missing the customer base that likes to go to Best Buy. And admittedly, there are some different demographic choices and diversity that's awesome and allows that. There's also some reach that the partners do provide. So I sincerely believe Amazon embraces this healthy co-opetition whereby it does sell on Amazon, it does provide that parity experience. Is there some natural business tension in this? Perhaps. Is it helpful to grow the overall pie? Absolutely. Do partners want in on this? You can bet in the early days of voice, every single partner was clamoring to sell, distribute, market, have its share in the Alexa growth story or voice assistant growth story when that was happening.
Yeah, and that I think is a really interesting other side of the perspective. Is like probably Best Buy and these other companies also feel like, hey, Amazon's maybe their biggest competitor in the market, and so on the one hand, they want to distribute and be able to sell these great products, and on the other hand, potentially they're nervous about giving Amazon real estate in their stores and like helping their competitor to grow. Did you ever like run into any of those types of conversations, or was it like pretty friendly cooperation and that stuff was already figured out at that point?
I think generally it was friendly for a variety of reasons. We have frequent contacts. That's why I think you always buffer these strategic relationships and partnerships, both with the transactional, the commercial, and everybody knows that, and execs have signed off, with the relational, which is it's actually pretty fun to work with Amazon. Like, yes, it is intense, and I would echo this view that Amazon's customer experience is superior. Amazon's partner experience in some way derived from that. They really want partners to be making money and enjoying that relationship. And then I would say the part that is interesting and certainly unpopular opinion would be Amazon's employee experience is the part that is pretty different, or maybe rougher if you like to say. We work the hardest to deliver on the first two elements of it. So to your point, did I ever sense it? Not in some of the partner engagements, but certainly between partners where you see during peak periods, and now we have a limited supply because we're not going to oversupply Alexa or Echo devices. And then in that regard, which partners are going to get some? That becomes strategic decision making, a couple of trade offs. And at the end of the day, there's no right decision. The marvel of it is there is no right and optimal decision, but based on the data, this is what the team thinks is the best go forward strategy. So I think that part I've always appreciated. Scrappy, not just in their approach, but also scrappy in how it quickly embraced the decision, the results, and then moved on for that. There was very little navel gazing, very little looking back about should we, could we, but rather let's move forward. We have three courses of action. Let's just go forward on this. So that
Awesome.
part, that pace of execution definitely struck with me and influences how I approach partnerships nowadays as well.
Yeah, that's great, and I can understand why companies would love to partner with you, especially if they've worked in like slower moving companies. Like getting an opportunity to kind of see that pace and intensity probably was really enjoyable for them. So that's super cool to hear. So tell me a little bit about like your journey after Amazon and kind of how you ended up where you are now.
Sure. One last quick
Yeah.
sharing, maybe about a couple of minutes about Amazon. So I had a short tour of duty with Amazon Music. So I moved to San Francisco for personal reasons. And given that I had worked in my role in Echo and Alexa as the category sales leader with the music team, music was a major use case for Echo and Alexa devices. I then worked on channel partnerships for a year with them. So in that role, it became, now as I look back in hindsight, B2C, classic B2C brand partnerships. So in the consumer electronics space, we worked with Bose and Sonos. In the cable and telecommunication space, we worked with T-Mobile, and we had an awesome activation with T-Mobile in the T-Mobile Tuesdays loyalty and sweepstakes program. So a lot of what I learned about B2C partnership brand activations, I now parlay and apply, albeit in a different manner, to B2B partnerships. Because ultimately, a lot of, if you were to ask me, and I know we'll get there in our conversation, what is one trend I see is that a lot of B2B engagement and the nature of those partnerships actually draw inspiration from B2C and have a lot to learn from B2C, because ultimately B2B is usually B2B to C. You do touch a customer. And so as a partner leader, a partner person, you are directly or indirectly an experience maker. You are responsible for how somebody interacts with both your companies together. More for a different time. So with Amazon Music, my takeaway there, I worked, for instance, with T-Mobile, and there I learned that execution and that brand activation becomes so critical because visibility and attention is key, and you have those 3 days, that 5 days to pull that off. And so the good news there, I won't go into details on that execution. That was amazing. It was a runaway success from a brand promotion standpoint. And because of that, months later, we saw a couple of other competitor brands run the same activity. And to me, I like to think imitation is surely the sincerest form of flattery. But in this case, when two of them imitate you, you know they have clearly taken attention of what you've done. So that was a fun time for me with the music team. Learn a lot about how to make the most of two different brands, their strongest strengths, their audience base, and then get that message, get that joint offering together to customers. So that I still try in a different way with some of the B2B partnerships I'm engaged in now.
Awesome. Yeah, and so the that partnership with T-Mobile is really interesting. Like there's a lot of distribution opportunity that comes from working with a large player like that who has huge reach, right? Like tell me a little bit about how that came together. I mean, Amazon and T-Mobile, that's a massive deal, right? So yeah, tell me a little bit about how that
Yeah,
formed.
yeah, absolutely. So again, it started with internal partnerships whereby I was on the partner marketing slash biz dev, so indirect role, and then working directly at that time with our business development leader. So his mind is always the long-term distribution potential of a telecom partner like T-Mobile. But in the short term, both to assess the potential of the relationship and also to activate and get the base really excited. This is where we said, hey, let's put together a joint promotion at launch. What should we wrap that around? You always try and find the word that was frequently in my mind then was placement or activity. So there are a lot of placements that T-Mobile has, obviously in their stores, marketing collateral, but they also had this loyalty program called T-Mobile Tuesday. So we all aligned early on that this will be our focal point. We are going to run an Amazon Music promotion on T-Mobile Tuesdays. So it would be the featured promotion for that day. Because when we listen to music, we like to have some complimentary goods. So we also offered, I think there were some other partners that offered a movie voucher and some popcorn. So there you have it. You get music, you get movies, popcorn, pretty much everything you need to have an enjoyable day out. And then we were the main featured offer. And that's when I started to get involved. So in some ways, to a lot of the partnership folks, that indirect partner marketing exposure and experience on my part became really critical because I really understood the messaging and I really understood the placement of things, how they went, how they stood, because that unboxing or that unveiling experience is really critical to an offering. So that's where we decided, all right, we're going to be in the app. How are we messaging ourselves? So I got involved in the creative. Obviously, we had design team members who were helping out, but I got involved in the overall planning of that project planning. So became a project manager to own that execution within the T-Mobile app, coordination with social, coordination with in-store messaging. Think about various components, truly omni-channel in the sense of brick and mortar, in-app, email, all messaging that is going live. And so with all those I's dotted and T's crossed, and both teams are ready to launch on that Tuesday, we were ready to go. Obviously, I was a little excited or anxious the night before. And then on the morning of it, I got up a little later. I think I was sleeping a little late. I got up about 9. We were tracking some of the signups in the app. So really, this is like a sweepstakes. You can either opt in and get $20 of Amazon Music. The thing that was really novel about it was we took what was a subscription product or service, music, and we actually positioned it as a gift or a sweepstake. So usually you think about subscription, you have to sign it up. So we actually productize a subscription or an experience and put it in the app. So previously it's all discrete items. You win a concert, you win a ticket. Now you get a service and access. And I put it in some monetary terms so everyone could understand this. Very easily understood, very appealing, obviously nice graphics. And then a couple of folks would win top prizes of Echo and Alexa devices from my old team. So we had that go live, and by 10 in the morning, the team pinged me and said, Shawn, this promotion and this launch is running away. And immediately from our leadership, our exec leader, hey, you got to pour more gas on the fire. This is amazing. So that moment of truth, and for me, I think there's a shorter feedback loop with B2C activations and promotions, but you see that. And in that case, literally within hours, you see our paid media SEO leader getting on it, stepping on the gas. You see different folks on it. And within the first day, I had to fire up a full report on how it worked and why. And so it's interesting because, like you said, you have an experiment, you have a thesis, but immediately you're like, this is a success. Let me attribute reasons for the success. I think now in hindsight, with that many years behind, one, you had two teams that were fully aligned on the experience that they wanted to deliver. Two, you had metrics that you could measure the engagement, you could measure the open rate, the conversion. And three, you had just clear and simple 5-year-old understandable communication. Here's what you're getting: $20 in Amazon Music. It's equivalent to 3 months. Get started, enjoy the music. We were certainly helped by a couple of zeitgeist, less planned events like T-Mobile CEO John Ledger at that time tweeting about it, or folks sharing that, hey, I got my credit, I'm really excited, picture of themselves. Those you can't control. I think you engender the different elements that would contribute towards a tipping point, contribute to a very positive and strong experience, and then you trust the process. At the end of the day, the team's done their work. You trust the process. If it pays off like it did in that case, that's great. Awesome team effort. And then later on, we then obviously talk nowadays about retention and the like. We even did a 90 and 120-day analysis to see how did that perform, how's that cohort staying, which I think is awesome. That speaks volumes to Amazon's approach. You're not just thinking about the initial activation, creating that very consumable experience. You're also thinking longevity. How do they stay? How do they retain? How do we then trend and rinse and repeat or replicate some of this approach? So in a nutshell, I know it took a couple more minutes than we expected. That was a very memorable experience for me
No,
in partnering with T-Mobile on that.
yeah, amazing. I'm pleased we dug into it, to be honest, because that's super relevant. And I actually wanted to ask one more question on that before we move on, just because I think it's going to be so interesting for folks.
Absolutely.
So, like, it sounds like that was a really big win for you and your team. Was it like equally as big a win for the T-Mobile folks as well? Like, what was success like on their team?
Absolutely. I think there are two elements to that. One was the immediate success in terms of engagement, because T-Mobile Tuesdays is a loyalty program. So what they want out of that is, one, engagement. So when you think about the thousands of folks who responded, took the offer, that's the take rate they can measure. So that's great. Two, they also think about it as loyalty building. So T-Mobile is very focused on the experience and the uncarrier if you think about their branding. So for them, these are part of their regular approach with customers. This is the way they work and live with their customers. So I think they really identified that strengthened their brand appeal. Second, they wanted that association, obviously, with Amazon and with Amazon Music and with Alexa being part of it, or Echo devices being part of that sweepstakes. I think that helps to brand them as being forward thinking. Obviously, I didn't go dive into them with some of the brand association and brand lift that they experienced, but I got to imagine after that, a lot of their customers start to think about, can I consume music obviously on my Echo, but can I now enjoy music on my T-Mobile devices, which I'm getting from T-Mobile? Because that way, the device and service play becomes a lot stickier for them. They're not just coming, they're coming maybe for the pricing, they're coming for the bundles, but they're staying for the experience, they're staying for the fact that now I can enjoy all the services that I come to expect through my provider, which is T-Mobile. So indirectly, that has got the bump and helped their retention and their stickiness with customers.
Love it. Yeah, that's awesome. So cool to hear about that partnership. What a massive
Thanks.
launch, and what a cool experience that must have been. So yeah, let's jump into like your steps afterwards, or like what kind of led you to where you are today.
Totally. So after 4 years at Amazon, and I moved to San Francisco, and once I left, I like to say, with the mothership being in Seattle, I felt a pull to try something different. So the recent journey to startups and B2B partnerships happened, and that transition happened on an entrepreneurial itch. I had always been interested, perhaps in some ways like yourself, in how talent is gravitating. How do you build systems to really help companies recruit better, show their culture better, written up a business plan and business school about it. And so when the opportunity came to join Lever, Lever, and I affectionately like to say a soap company, as folks saying Lever, no, Lever, the recruitment platform, applicant tracking system. So I joined Lever as their first director of partnerships and business development. So this was back in 2018, and I stayed for 2.5 years, clearly a different category, HR technology, recruiting. And my role there is twofold. One, I am building the partner program and ecosystem. Two, I'm really focusing on imbuing revenue into that, because sometimes much has been said about how we want to build tech partnerships and ecosystems for influence and to grow the overall competitiveness of the company. But for sure, you also do need the other aspect, which is, well, when you have that ecosystem, when you have that group of partners and the economy that you form around it, how then are you monetizing it, which is clearly not trivial. So clearly building pipeline, clearly tracking, having attribution, and then having some flows where you can run, some plays where you can run. I shy away from the word playbooks in a sense, because I think playbooks really vary, and I'm a lot more a fan of tenets and processes or mechanisms because those you can repeat. The playbooks will change depending on which stage. So as Lever was pretty much in a growth and scaling up stage, now I came in, put the revenue mechanisms in place, and then putting on my strategic BD hunting hat again. Happy to share shortly about one of the transformational partnerships that I worked on with Zoom Video and how that became, I think, key point for me, a highlight for me in my partnership journey there with Lever.
Yeah, I would love to hear about some of the partnerships there that you launched. Obviously, working at Deal at the moment, I'm in a somewhat similar space, complementary
Yeah,
technologies, and Lever's a partner of
absolutely.
ours and an integration. So that would be super cool to hear about some of the stories you had there, and Zoom would be an awesome one to start with.
Yeah, absolutely. So two things come to mind. One, listen to the customer. At that time, obviously Lever has many enterprise brands and counted Zoom as a customer. And so when the customer comes to you and they can be a partner, that becomes really interesting. So we were engaged with Zoom in a conversation and we thought about why don't we make a native, so in-app, very organic integration between Zoom's video app and the ability within Lever to start the interview process. So we're talking about you have a panel, and it's not just a one-to-one interview. It could be 5 people. At that time, most folks would typically be in the office, but we had a hypothesis, won't it come to that point when folks are distributed, when folks are remote, when folks are not all in the same location, and it would not be realistic to ask the candidate to fly into a conference room in San Francisco? Wouldn't it be helpful if you could easily schedule or self-schedule and immediately surface the interview link so the candidate knows, here I am, I'm all set for my Zoom interview, I've got it, I'm looking forward to connecting with the panel. So that was the premise, number one. But then two, what was really fascinating about that was also the way we approached it together. In the early days back then, and now hindsight bias is perfect, the question was asked, what makes you think this is going to be game changing or priority? Because we are putting roadmap to this. We are accelerating and prioritizing and carving out part of the roadmap to do that. And then at the same time for Zoom, there's the element of when do you launch it? Do you just let it happen? At that time, Zoom didn't have a talent category or HR category, which is fascinating because the thought was, how is video conferencing and HR recruiting connected? Now it's all clear. We've all connected those dots together. And so two things I did. One was I worked with our team and we took some bets, as I shared in a recent PR fireside chat. This was a bet where we determined we want some differentiation. And this was an example of a strategic partnership that we had together unearthed. We get the right buy-in internally with product. I was close with our product leader. We were working closely with Zoom's developer advocate team. And we realized, let's make this happen. We're going to take that bet. We're going to commit some of our pipeline. And in return, being a partner leader as your entrepreneurial, you then have that nice negotiation process with the partner, in this case, Zoom, to say, we are expediting everything for you. It needs to come alive and we need to cross the start line together in a visible way. So where is that most visible platform? It's Zoomtopia. It's your third ever customer conference. That year, they had the actor who played Spock in the show, and he was emceeing. And obviously, they closed out the conference with Richard Branson. And so we said, is there a way we can be part of Zoomtopia? And eventually, we presented in one of the breakout sessions and where we showcased and unveiled the integration, first ever. Looking back, it's probably nostalgic to think, what did people think? Recruiting, video interviewing, how does it come together? But we launched there and then. And the best part of it is within a couple of months, more than a third of our entire enterprise base adopted that integration. So this is the fruit that you're seeing. One, obviously, the partner buys in, you take a bet, you commit the roadmap, but then the customers are already there. So I like to say that reviewed preference is probably way more important than stated preference. If a customer or partner says, let's do this, they mean, yeah, let's do this. And then when customers and the partner just adopt it immediately, that's, we are doing this. So
Yeah.
in some ways, it comes full circle. And when I look back, I think about the friendships that we forged, some of the, as I like to share in PL, the internal alliances that we had and external that allowed us to deliver it. And that was one partnership that certainly was a differentiator for Lever. And so in the coming weeks and months, you see folks even reaching out saying, hey, I heard about it. They may not have reached out purely to activate a video interviewing or video conferencing integration, but they heard about it. And obviously Zoom was clearly on a fast ascent as a brand. So both brands coming together, you get some of that brand lift and partnership. You get the clear benefit from the integration. And then once the adoption happens and your enterprise customers are saying, this is awesome, my huge team of recruiters is using it, that advocacy is just a gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah, that's so cool. So cool. I actually I remember when that integration came out, we were using Lever at Amplitude, and I remember when
Right.
when the Zoom integration came out, and it's like, oh, now you get the Zoom link right there in the invite, and it was
Yeah.
and like at the time
Keep it
it
simple.
was kind of a game changer, you know. It was like it that
Yeah.
removed so many steps out of the process, and now like it seems funny to think about, right? Because obviously, like you said, it's so obvious that that stuff would happen, and that, you know, like you create a
Hmm.
meeting and the Zoom link just gets created, and the whole thing's so seamless. But at the time, that was so many steps. And it is amazing to think back on that. I'd completely forgot that there was a world before that integration. So that's really, really cool.
I think one thing to add, Ty, there is really, if you think about the hat, and you know, or friends know, I'm passionate about customer experience. And I think as partner leaders, we all have different backgrounds. I think it's going to be an even more diverse set of personal and professional journeys we've come on. But if we think about the end customer experience and how we are definitely contributing to that, that becomes very uplifting. That becomes very motivating. So this started with the product partnership conversation. And I'm certainly a fan of partner and product-led growth, no question. But it then immediately translates down the line to a clear recruiter and customer experience changing. Something as simple as having a Zoom link magically appear the moment you create an interview. As a partner person, you were responsible for making that experience. So I think when you look back at it, we can give ourselves more credit than we often think are due us, and the experience that we contributed to that carries on with us. In addition, obviously, to the partnership and the integration and some of the more concrete things that we leave behind.
So obviously, amazing experience working at some larger companies in like more developed partner programs, and you know, now you're working in a smaller startup. So how have things changed now that you're working in a smaller team and kind of running that program?
Yeah, one, here's a joiner from my past roles. I would say we are all, as partner leaders, running our own race. So, my past experiences with a new category at Alexa and working on channel partnerships with the Amazon Music team, and then building partner programs dealing with tech and channel. I like to call those two big building blocks of a partner program, have absolutely helped me, given me the toolkit and some of the pattern recognition and matching that I need now to be employee number 11, because I am now in a category creation opportunity, back with voice, back with AI, voice automation. So think of it as Alexa, but now B2B version of Alexa, Alexa for brands. I've worked in the B2C version with Amazon, now early. So I think two things have changed. One, clearly with that category mindset, there's a lot more education of the market. There's a lot more community being involved, and we spend a lot of time talking about that, understanding that our buyers, our partners have many different ways and sources of influence that they learn about us, learn about what we stand for and what we're trying to do. So community becomes clear. And then third, I think the entrepreneurial aspect, where I view myself in three different lenses, and I've shared this recently. I view myself clearly as a hunter. I would hunt for opportunities as we build out our partner program and ecosystems. I see myself as a farmer. I'm going to put in place actionable plans I can take to grow partner A year on year. But I also see myself very clearly now as a scientist, where I am experimenting. I'm experimenting with messaging. I'm experimenting with some of the offers and how we would approach our community and market together. I'm experiencing different approaches in brand building. I would admit in the past, whenever I use LinkedIn or social, it was more for announcements and to share. So a little bit more of a one way monologue or an announcement mechanism. But now there's a lot more dialogue. There's learning. There is building out loud and learning out loud that is going on for me as well. So I can hopefully share and pay it forward. And because so much is fluid in an early stage startup, it is really all hands on deck, and that energy and the direction that comes from that is truly very motivating for me.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I can imagine at a company of that size, you're wearing a lot of hats. Like how do you juggle between being helpful broadly to the company, you know, and wearing a lot of hats, and then also kind of selfishly prioritizing the growth of the partner business, which is really how your success is going to be measured in the future. How do you kind of make trade-offs and prioritize between those two?
Yeah, I think there's one approach, and then there's one general approach. I think of us as partner leaders. You want to be a T-shaped leader in the sense that you want to be broad. You want to have exposure to marketing, to sales, because then you can work on very effective partner marketing. And partner marketing is a huge growth and brand building enabler for both brands. And then even sales, you have to understand how to connect and work with partner sales teams. And certainly, obviously, in partnerships, which that is the straight end or the trench of our T. So you are helpful. And then my approach is really what Jerry Maguire, Tom Cruise says in Jerry Maguire, help me help you, whereby if our marketing team is successful, if you're getting the messaging out, if we're running what we want to run through our webinars, our LinkedIn events, our thought leadership with partners, we are jointly successful. I much rather, as a company, we hit our goals and we're successful, especially at this stage, than I am right. So I focus less on me being right, but me iterating fast, testing and learning fast, and helping us be right and helping us win together with marketing, with sales, with R&D, certainly with finance, and then myself. And then in a whole, the more I do that, and the more it becomes first instinct for me, the faster all our partner teams internally will realize we need partnerships for this to happen. If we need a marketing campaign, where's the partner angle? If we are running a product, it's because there is a partner and there's an ecosystem tech stack approach that we're having to that. So I think I've done it very explicitly, and I've also made it clear that I am a builder, but I'm also a team member. I'm here first for the company to succeed, for us to learn what is right and objectively the best way to grow. And then obviously I own our function. And a large part of being a partner leader in a smaller startup is constantly keeping everybody appraised. Tell them about the partnership why, not in terms of why they are working with you, but why we are focusing and devoting resources. I report and work with our CEO, Brian, and our Chief Revenue Officer, Sam. And so we are always on the same mind. The part that amazes me is we're probably just maybe 1 or 2 hours away. We are in our own space thinking and brainstorming, but then we are constant. Then we're connected. It's a little bit of an analogy like a band that is playing, and there's that part where the drummer hits and everybody's on the same note. And all right, now we're aligned and we're moving forward. At some point, each can improvise a little bit, but then we're going to snap together and we'll be moving forward again, playing the same tune. So that short cycle of iteration, testing, and certainly the trust that comes out of it. We cannot, in a small team, we cannot move fast enough, but we can only move fast enough if there's that trust. Shawn is not just acting on behalf of his role as a partner leader to advance what partnerships wants to do. He's going to work through partnerships. He's going to use that trust he's built in that program and community, but he's absolutely going to advance our goals and objectives as a company. So we should trust him to run that. And then we support him fully, or we enjoy the process. And when it gets there, I think that's amazing when they enjoy it. And I like to tell my marketing team members, come enjoy these partners, because the more you see my partners, you know what I'm getting, the energy, the thought process, the ideation. It's the same team. They are an extension of us. And I don't think of us as here's the firm dotted line between partnerships and marketing. Absolutely not.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Love it. Okay, well, it's been an amazing conversation. Where we like to end these is asking if there's something that you've learned recently that you can share with the listeners.
Absolutely. So now if people ask me a question, Shawn, is this your virtual background? This is not. This is my actual background. I did share recently on social that I love how remote work, I did not think I would say that. I really love how remote work has allowed us to work with and connect with a talented team from across the country. That is amazing. I'm here in the Bay Area in California. Our co-founders are in New York, in San Diego. We have an amazing superstar marketing team in Utah. I think this is not only the way, but this is truly how you build regional and local network and community. But then you get the best of the talent and you operate differently. And that actually, if you think about it, helps you become more sensitive and closer to what is happening in different regional markets. You start to develop empathy. I think empathy is really important when you want to work remotely. I also think the acknowledgement that you manage based on outcomes rather than activity and time spent on something. If somebody is in a different time zone, but they're going to spend 15 minutes and get the job done, absolutely go for it. That time zone does not factor into consideration on how we work together. So that has truly upended my conventions and how I think about it. I would say I have embraced it feet first. I've jumped into it. I've enjoyed it, and there's no looking back for me, and certainly for the team, I would say.
Awesome. Yeah, well, we're singing from the same hymn sheet there. Obviously, working at Deal, we believe something very similar, and around the world, and I'm experiencing that right now as well, where we're over 1,200 employees at Deal, and people are distributed completely around the world, no physical office, and things are working really, really well. So,
I think,
yeah,
yeah, the last point to add, to play into that, there is room certainly for connection. Obviously, virtual connections, we have socials. In my third week of my stint here, we met in Vegas for an e-commerce conference. And in my fourth week, I was in San Diego. I think you treasure the in-person times in a different way. You are much more intentional and planful about how you structure those times. Ideally, we like to say you can meet with the team, you can meet with a customer, and you can meet with a partner at the same time. So you achieve a couple of joint objectives at one go. This is the new normal. I think we've learned to be agile, we've learned to adapt to it, but we've also learned to really enjoy it. You can now have your own setup where you are and be productive. And then when you meet with a team, you have clearly stated goals. You're there to be refreshed, you're there to enjoy that team dynamic, and then we each move on and go improvise, as per my previous analogy.
love it. Awesome. Well, Shawn, thank you so much for making yourself available, and really appreciate the time. And I think people are going to love this conversation. So can't wait to get it out and for people to listen to it.
My pleasure. Delighted to connect, Ty. Take care too.